Hello again, my name's John. I'm a retired cook from the northeast of England in the UK, and welcome to my latest bread video. And in this one I'll be making these delicious but very easy to make Vietnamese style baguettes. And if you follow my recipe very carefully, using only the 4 basic bread making ingredients, flour, water, yeast and salt, I guarantee you'll be making the very best sandwich bread you've ever tasted. And I don't say that lightly, because these little Vietnamese style baguettes really are that good. You can view the ingredients list and full written method for this recipe on the recipe page on the channel's website. I'll leave a link in the description under the video, or you can click on the eye icon top right of the screen to take you directly to the recipe page. And I'll be doing the Patreon and PayPal shout out a little later in the video. And with that out of the way, let's get on with today's recipe. First, I want to spend a couple of moments talking about cup and jug measurements and why I personally don't use them. Now, this is one of 2 sets that I own, and if you go online it says one lightly compacted cup of flour should weigh 150 grams. So for this recipe I need 3.5 cups, which should weigh 525 grams. So I'll go through it exactly and test the results on my digital scales. Okay, that's 3 cups. Now for the half cup. And the result is, as you can see, the amount of flour is too much for this recipe. And I did this 3 times with a different reading each time. And now I'll just purely weigh the flour. And that's what it should be, 525 grams. Right, now for the water. And as you can clearly see, it says this cup holds 250 mils. Now 250 millilitres of water is exactly the same as 250 grams of water. Now let's test that. Can't get another drop in without it overflowing, and it's still 15 mils or grams short. So that's the flour and the water wrong so far. And that's why I don't include cups in my ingredients lists. Now, as far as using markings on the side of measuring jugs is concerned, I've never owned an accurate one yet. Now, this is probably the best known and used jug brand on the planet, and it tells you right there on the jug itself that the markings is an approximate measurement. So the best way to measure water is by weighing it. So for this recipe I need 390 mils, which is the same as saying 390 grams. And try to use bottled or filtered water if you can. And that just leaves the salt and yeast to measure. Now this set of spoons is the most accurate I have, so I'll test these results on my jeweler scales. The 1 teaspoon of salt is acceptable between 7 and 8 grams, which it is. And the half teaspoon of dried yeast should be around just over 2 grams. And that also is close enough. Please don't think I have anything against cup and jug measurements. I've only brought the subject up because so many people on YouTube and Facebook are wondering why their mix is completely different than mine when they've converted my measurements to cups and jugs. If that's what you're used to, then that's your choice. But I want you to have the best possible chance of getting good results from your baking, and there is no easier or better way than using digital scales. I do give the measurements in imperial ounces too, and because it's a smaller unit, grams is definitely the best and most accurate way to go. And remember, a gram is universal. It's exactly the same wherever you live in the world. Right, enough of that. Let's get on with this gorgeous no-knead recipe. Start by adding the flour and salt to a bowl and mix those together. Next, add the dry yeast and mix that in too. I'm using instant dried yeast for this recipe, but you can use active dried yeast in exactly the same way. If you're using fresh yeast, you'll need 10 grams dissolved in the water. And now I'll add the water and bring it all together, of course using my trusty wooden spoon handle. Check the website shop if you want one. Now the water is only about 17 degrees Celsius, which is about 62 Fahrenheit. Another important point, make sure your yeast is alive and well before you start the recipe. Now I've checked this batch and it's working fine. If you watch my sandwich bread video, I show you how to do a test on your yeast. I'll leave a link in the description box, or you can just click on the eye icon top right of your screen. Once it's all come together in a sticky mass as shown, scrape down the sides of the bowl with a spatula. Now cover the bowl. I use a shower cap for this, and these extra strong caps are back on sale in a website shop if you want one of those too. Now set your timer for 45 minutes. How easy was that? That's the first stage out of the way. Okay, once your first of 2 rises in the bowl is done, scrape it out onto a slightly wet bench as shown. And as you can see, there's not a great deal of change in the size for the first rise, but that's okay. Now with wet hands, give the dough a half a dozen turns as shown. Try to use the same technique as me. It takes a little practice, but it's easy once you get used to it. And because you're using this slap and fold technique, you should instantly see the dough become much smoother at this point. Right, okay, so far so good. Get it back into the bowl, cover it, and this time, just for a change, I'm going to give it its final rise in the bowl inside the oven with just the light bulb on. But any warm draft-free spot will do. And now I'll give it 1 hour for its final rise in the bowl, and you want it to at least double in size. This time may vary depending on the temperature of your kitchen. And while that's proofing, you'll need to get a couple of things ready, starting with oiling a strip of cling film, and I'll show you what I use that for a little later. Now I'll set that aside for now. And now you'll need to prepare what's known in the baker's trade as a couche cloth. Basically, it's just a piece of well-floured material, and it's there to support this relatively wet dough as it rises. And I just use a cotton pillowcase for mine. It's a lot cheaper than the original couche material, and it does exactly the same job. My regular viewers will have seen this many times. I explain how it works a bit more in my French baguette or ciabatta videos. And finally, you'll need your digital scales to divide the dough and your flour sprinkler at the ready. Okay, the dough has doubled in size and it's time to pre-shape these baguettes. Start by sprinkling some flour over the worktop. Turn the dough out and give the top a light dusting of flour too. To evenly divide the dough, we need to calculate the total weight, and if you followed the measurements very carefully at the beginning, that should be very easy. Just add them all together and divide the total weight by 6, and each piece should weigh 150 grams or 5.5 ounces each. Right, I'll let you watch while I divide it up. Once you have it divided, you need to pre-shape the baguettes as shown. A lot of people say they don't have time to make these. In total, and that's including the baking time, it takes about 3.5 hours to make these, but 90% of that is proofing time, so you're not spending that much time actually working on them. It's like when you do your laundry, you don't sit there and watch your machine for 2.5 hours, you utilise that time in doing something else. It's very important to allow the dough to completely relax after dividing and pre-shaping. This stage makes the final baguette shapes much easier to achieve. Now cover the pre-shapes with the oil cling film prepared earlier and let them rest for 15 to 20 minutes. I like to allow 20. Okay, the final step coming up. Make sure there's no flour on the work surface, and add a tiny little drop of oil and spread it out as thin as possible. I'm using vegetable oil, but any oil will do. This just makes the worktop slightly sticky. If you used flour, the dough would just slide around. Right, the best way to follow this part is to just watch. Shape the dough like I'm doing. And from the thin end, start to roll the dough back, but just from the outer edge of the shape. Try not to touch the middle where it's starting to bulge up. Once you get to the end, flip it over and pinch the seam together as shown. Once you're done, it should resemble a Cornish pasty, which I will be making in a future video, by the way. It's actually much easier to do than it is to explain. I'll do another one from a different angle so you can get a good idea of how it's done. Believe me, this whole recipe is a lot easier to do when you're not trying to control 3 cameras at the same time. Right, the final step in the shaping. Once they're all done, start with the first one you made and very gently, without any downward pressure and with light hands, roll the dough until you have a reasonably pointy ends. Once again, this is not as difficult as it looks. The dough at this point is soft but easy to handle. I'll show you one more again. Now simply transfer them to the couche cloth. And very importantly, make sure the seam side is down on the bottom. Once you have 2 done, adjust the cloth as shown so you support the baguettes and sprinkle a little more flour on the top. A lot of people ask in the comments, why is the couche cloth necessary? And can I not just let them rise on a tray or parchment paper? So to explain, the cloth gently supports these high hydration or relatively wet doughs. If they didn't have that support from both sides, they would simply spread out instead of up. Once all 6 are done, cover them with a lightweight dry cloth. The dishcloths I use I have on the website and they're ideal for this purpose because they're nice and light. If you used a heavy towel, it would certainly restrict the dough from rising in an upward direction. Okay, now set your timer for 1 hour. And while those are proofing, I hope you don't mind if I give my very first recipe book a bit of a mention. The book has lots of our favourite recipes from our work kitchens in it and is available in the channel's website shop along with loads of other equipment I use in the videos. It's just another way you can support the channel. I'll leave a link in the description box below the video or just click on the eye icon top right of your screen if you want to order a copy today. When there's only 10 minutes left on the final rise, preheat your oven to 220 Celsius, that's 430 Fahrenheit, or gas mark 7. And to make these baguettes as crispy as possible, very carefully place a pan of boiling water on the bottom of the oven, and do this when you turn the oven on. And to make them even crispier, have a spray bottle of water at the ready. You'll also need to lightly grease a couple of baking trays with oil, butter or lard. The dimensions of the trays that I'm using are on screen. There's 2 or 3 tools for making the slashes in these baguettes. The first example is the curved blade. These are available in the website shop. The second is the straight blade like this one. But my personal favourite is this thin bladed knife which I keep razor sharp and its sole purpose is for slashing baguettes. But any of these blades will do the job. Okay, the final hour is up, so I'll carefully transfer 3 of them to the first tray. They will have formed a thin skin, so it's okay to gently pick them up by hand. Once they're on the tray and evenly spaced out, give each one 2 slashes as shown. Slashing the dough does take a little confidence and practice, especially with these high hydration recipes. So be confident and quick, but also please be very careful. So you can clearly see through the glass, I'm only doing 3 in this oven. I'll do the other 3 off camera in the other oven. Obviously you can get both trays in your oven. So get them straight into the preheated oven, open the door slowly so you don't get a blast of steam. Once they're in, give them a quick spray with water and get the door shut and set your timer for 16 minutes. After a couple of minutes these baguettes start to rise a bit in the oven. This is called oven spring. And just out of interest, notice how much the tray has deformed in the oven. And by the time they've done, the tray will go back to its normal shape. And this is what they look like after 10 minutes. Okay, these beauties are done. Now I'll get them out and onto a wire rack. And here's the other 3 also done. And they look absolutely gorgeous, not to mention the smell of freshly baked bread in my kitchen. And just listen to how crispy they are. As well as being crispy, they're very light and airy. Wonderful. I'll allow them to cool for 15 minutes and when I come back I'll make one of my favourite sandwiches. Just listen to how crispy that is. Now the Vietnamese people would fill these with spiced chicken or pork and lots of other delicious ingredients, which unfortunately I'm not allowed. And what a lovely crumb it has on the inside. Not big bubbles like my other French baguette video, because these are made using a slightly different process. Right, I'm going to make myself a cheese and ham salad sandwich, but honestly you can fill these with anything you like. One day I'll make a video on how I make my famous steak and blue cheese sandwiches. Right, that's ready. Now I'll take a thumbnail shot and I'll be right back for a big bite of this beauty. And honestly, that has got to be the best sandwich baguette bread on the planet. And I'm not kidding. If you don't give this one a big thumbs up, then you'll never give anything a thumbs up. Absolutely stunning. And made only from 4 basic ingredients: flour, water, yeast and salt. Amazing. And as promised at the beginning, here is the latest list of my Patreon and PayPal donators. And they are Teresa Perry, Eddie Smythe, Mark Winters, Elaine Flournoy, Peter Hollowan, Yog Depp, Lindsay Rennick, Renee Lascala, Mandy Capaldi, Paul Gaines, Valerie Powell, Kay Grindle Scarlett, Kristen Obst, Wendell Messer, David Borin, Justina Valenzuela, T. Van Diest at Treasure Island Baking, Krasimira Vashkova, Yulia Andreev, Wendy Gangloff, Edward Davis, Franz Ballandon, Suman Prasad, Kayla Lynn, Stacey Chan, Asa Al-Shamsi, Kate Bartholomew, Richard Hinsley. And also there's 2 who wishes to remain anonymous. And thanks again guys, I really do appreciate all your support. Well, thank you again for watching. Please like, share, comment and subscribe by hitting the circle above. If you do subscribe, activate the bell icon next to the subscribe button on my channel page. And by doing that, you'll be automatically notified every time I upload a new video. And in the meantime, here's a few of my other videos and playlists that you may want to watch. So, until the next time, be safe in the kitchen and bye for now.